Yes, Lord, girl, you ought to sing that song. I feel like Leona Lewis was so underrated. But nonetheless, if you remember this song, if you have seen the movie Avatar and stayed for the end credits, you probably remember this song "I See You" by Leona Lewis. Such a fantastic song. Gets you in the mood, gets you in the vibes, all that good jazz. Um, so why are we talking about this song and why are we talking about Avatar? Well, I got to see the sequel, Avatar 2, The Way of Water, in theaters. I saw it in digital 4K, and it was so visually, it was so beautiful to just watch. I don't know what it is about Avatar and the franchise, but every time I just watch it, I just always feel so at ease. Whenever I just see the visual effects, the cinematography, the landscape, the world of Avatar itself. I don't know what it is. Even when I went to Animal Kingdom a few years ago at Disney World, and I went on that ride. What is it? The Flight of Passage ride. It's a simulator of when you're flying on those Ikran creatures, those flying things, and it almost feels like a roller coaster at some point, but you just get used to it, and the visuals are just so pleasing that I just didn't worry about the ride and how tickling my stomach felt and all that stuff. It just put me in a zen, really. I went to go see Avatar 2 literally on New Year's Eve. It was the last thing that I did in 2022. But the movie was like 3 hours, so it carried over into the new year of 2023. Literally, the climax of the movie, if I remember correctly, was my Happy New Year moment. Just everything violent going on. That was a great welcoming into the 2023 year. One thing that really stole my attention was how the music was going to play along. How was the music going to be in this film, in the sequel? This is where I get deep and a little heavy here. The original Avatar composer, his name is James Horner. James Horner. And if you don't know him, he's widely known for a number of projects, but particularly Titanic. And one thing about his work on Titanic was obviously the song "My Heart Will Go On," where he actually produced, he composed the song and collaborated with Celine Dion. Later on, he worked on Avatar. Beautiful soundtrack, almost very similar in a way, especially he, after collaborating with Celine Dion, he then collaborates with Leona Lewis on this song "I See You." So the vibes are quite there. Unfortunately, though, James Horner, he tragically died in a plane crash in 2015, and that was pretty heavy, especially on me, because that man, his work really inspired me he really inspired my creativeness. Outside of Hans Zimmer and what he did, especially on The Lion King, Gladiator, and Pirates of the Caribbean, outside of James Newton Howard and all the stuff that he's done, like Disney's Dinosaur, James Horner really had a unique style, a unique world building style in his composition that really captivated me a lot. And he inspired me to write a fantasy novel called Alpha. That's and it's published and it's out there on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Google Books, eBooks, whatever. And writing that book, I listened to nothing but the Avatar soundtrack. A little bit of Titanic, but the way my book was set up, Avatar was perfect. Was a perfect soundtrack to just write along with. And I remember I wrote this, I handwritten this book when I was like 12 years old. So I spent a whole summer break away from school just writing it in a notebook, in a spiral notebook. And then I retyped it on my computer. Again, listening to the soundtrack. And I remember saying around that age that if I were ever to have this book be a motion picture, I would not think twice about having James Horner on this project to compose the soundtrack for this. And I was so ready. My teenage self was so ready. I was already thinking big, thinking way ahead, and just saying like, and just living a fantasy world of my own, saying like James Horner has to compose the soundtrack if this book is ever going to be adapted into a motion picture. For this episode of this podcast was basically make some sort of a tribute to James Horner here. Show my respect to him, show my appreciation for him and his work. You know, I always say every time I listen to good music, I always feel appreciative. And I thank God that that music like this exists. And if it's ever not appreciated, it will always be appreciated by me. Hands down, always. I will preach the word, I will preach the gospel. And so here I am behind the mic, finally opening myself and showing appreciation, in my opinion, one of the great legendary composers in the film music industry. And little did I know, the composer for Avatar 2, his name is Simon Franglen. He actually worked alongside James Horner when they worked on My Heart Will Go On. That was crazy to me because I looked on Spotify, I looked on the credits, and I saw his name. I said, wow, it all makes sense now. And then, even before that, I discovered that he actually composed some pieces for the Avatar section in Animal Kingdom at Disney World. And so some of the credits, obviously, some of those tracks have James Horner's name on the credits. But some of the other stuff, Simon, he really did a great job. As you walk around the attraction and you hear the music playing around the speakers, and he actually did that. And so credit to him, and credit to doing a great follow-up for the sequel. You listen as you watch the movie and you listen to the score, you can hear the tribute paying homage to James Horner. Some of the melodies, if you actually listen to the original Avatar soundtrack like heavily, like I do, you'll notice, you'll feel nostalgic in a way. It was an important element for the sequel, which I honestly, I think it really did a great job story-wise, with the script. But I think this the sequel really dives really deep into storytelling and puts more character for these characters that want to come back, and then the new characters in a way. But that's just my opinion. But anyway, what Simon did here in the sequel, he took a specific melody from the song I See You, the song. He rearranged it in a way to where it's more or it's more tension in a way, but respectfully it still stays true to what it was originally composed for, if that makes sense, in my interpretation. So the ICU motif in the original Avatar really brings you into the world building of Pandora, the planet. But it also serves as a theme for the main character Jake Sully and the love interest Neytiri. And it's so graceful, it's quite romantic. In some ways, how it's used, you can get that romantic, graceful vibe, or you can get a more powerful, uh, uprising, revolting type, feeling. Triumphant. That's the word I'm trying to think of. It's powerful and triumphant. The world of Avatar winning against these human invaders, but it definitely works for the love interest between Jake Sully and Neytiri. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play you a couple tracks, a couple scores from the original, from the first Avatar, and just so you can hear, if you keep that the melody of ICU in your head, you will recognize it within within these scores. We're gonna dive on in, and then we're gonna interpret it. Let's go. Hope you enjoyed that. Um, so yeah, so those were a few tracks that contain the ICU motif. So we start off with Jake enters his avatar world. This is the part where, well, it's literally self-explanatory, but if you remember, this is when Jake Sully first gets into his avatar body, and he wakes up in the on a hospital bed, and they're trying to test his reactions, his instincts, and all that stuff. And then, he gets up, and his tail goes out of control. It starts destroying the medical equipment and all that stuff. And then he escapes from the facility, and he's running. He's trying to get his balance. And so, because remember, he was originally handicapped. His leg, he doesn't have any feeling in his leg, so his life has been in a wheelchair. So when he gets into his avatar body and he can walk and he can run, he's stumbling a bit like a baby, but then he, after a few steps, he kicks it into high gear, and he's sprinting down in the outside, and he's enjoying life right now. And that's when you hear the whole percussion and everything going around. That's when you hear the ICU melody. And so that melody, that motif, like I said, it serves like multiple purposes. One of them, in this case, is to bring you in to the Avatar world. It introduces Jake Sully into the world of Pandora, the indigenous point of view of Pandora. He hasn't met the locals yet, but in his avatar body, his instincts have enhanced. Now he feels the unique instincts of how it is to be Metakaian. The next track, Pure Spirits of the Forest. So then we talk about which lead us into the next track, Pandora. Pandora, this track is part of the deluxe version of the soundtrack. There's two soundtracks. There's the original composition, and the other is the deluxe soundtrack. So it's got bonus tracks, basically. So Pandora is the bonus track, and I wanted to play you that song because this is really when the motif really brings the audience in on this tour of Pandora. It's a musical tour of Pandora, and you hear the choir in the background now. It's not just the orchestra, it's now there's a choir, and I think these are majority of the choir is like children, or they're like young children or women, to let you see the world of Pandora through the indigenous eyes. So now, an icing on the cake, the finishing touch of how to let you, the audience, see the world of Pandora as one of these people. Now you got the choir involved. The choir represents the people, right? And obviously it's inspired by, cultures from around the world, the indigenous culture. Composers, they find way to sort of mimic that in a respectful way. It felt natural for a fantasy movie. It really felt authentic. It felt natural. That's what makes it so great about James Horner's work. It feels very authentic. From I know I keep reverting back to Titanic, but Titanic really felt authentic as well. I mean, I know it's a time period piece, but still, the music just flows. And now we transition into we talk about the pure spirits of the forest, and the other track, becoming one of the people, becoming one with Neytiri. So pure spirits of the forest, this is when these white specks just flow. They just descend on Jake, and they cover him up for a moment. Neytiri's like shocked about all this because those specks represent the deity Awa. It's one of those, he's the chosen one and all that stuff, and so Neytiri has to abide by that as a sign. And so she takes them to her home tree. As they're on their way, that's when you hear the motif being played in the background by like the woodwinds and orchestra, and it's very light, it's very bright. It's a planting of the seed of their relationship. And then we transition into becoming one of the people, becoming one with Neytiri. So becoming one of the people, this is the montage of Jake Sully's training with Neytiri. She has to teach him the ways of her tribe, the Ometakain people, in order to become one of the people. So he's got to know how to bond with the creatures, know how to hunt, know how to maneuver through the vegetation and all that stuff. And so he succeeds, and he becomes one of the people. I like how at the beginning of the track is very light-hearted, and you got the boy singing or harmonizing, and then the rest of the choir comes in with the role of the cymbal, and then the orchestra does its thing with the motif. It's just Jake and Neytiri, out there, and he's in the middle of this training. The motif is sort of planting the seeds of their potential romance. But now we get to becoming one with Neytiri. After he's accepted by the people, they have that ceremony where they draw paint on his body, and all members of the tribe, they put their hands on him and say like they accept him as their brother now. We transition into the scene where Jake and Sully there is in the middle of the night. They're walking around within amongst the tree of Awa, and she's explaining to him like, oh yeah, now that you're one of us, you can do as you please. You can carve, you can make a weapon out of the holy tree, and you could choose a woman. You could choose any woman you want. Throughout the whole time, it's playing the ICU song. The usage of the motif is a world building motif. It's the world of Pandora. It's a love motif within the world of Pandora. Everything is Pandora about this motif. And then under that is Jake Sully and Neytiri's romance. So now we're going to transition into Simon Franglen's work on Avatar 2, The Way of Water. And we're going to discuss about it. Did you hear the arrangements? Did you see the similarities, the familiarities of the motif? But you heard the motif. It was there. I really do commend Simon Franglen for doing his own thing and putting his whole spiel on this project. Really, truly a great job. Fantastic job, honestly. I think it truly does walk alongside with the original, because it still has its own identity. So The Way of Water, it's is still in Pandora, but you're now in a different element of Pandora. The first Pandora, you were in the forest with all of the forest dwellers, the Ometakayan tribe. Now we have stepped out of the forest and into the water, into the beach, off the shores. Now we're in the ocean and we meet this new tribe called the Metkaina clan. And these people, they are evolutionarily different than the Ometakayan. The Ometakayan are forest folks, so they are adapted to live in the forest. The Metkaina people, they are more like fish people. They have fins for tails. They only have 3 fingers, and the rest of their hand is built for them to swim. Everything on their bodies is built to swim. They are bigger. I think they have their eyes are bigger or whatnot. So they are different, and they're brighter skin. So that I thought that was really nice to see how there's different forms. But Jake Sully has now integrated with the Pandora world. He's no longer he's left his human being life, and he's now part of the culture now. And so when we start off with this track, "Happiness is Simple," this happens in the beginning of the movie, and it's basically everything that happened after the first movie was done. After the war was done, now Jake Sully is the leader of the Amatakayan tribe, and he has married Neytiri, and they have children. They have children. Um, they have a couple of sons and a daughter, and they somehow replicated the DNA of Grace, the scientist. She died in the first movie, but somehow they managed to have a replication of her DNA. So they basically cloned her as this avatar child. So they have 4 kids. They have 4 kids, and they also adopted a child of the villain of Quatrich. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And Neytiri wasn't feeling it. Oh boy, she was not feeling it. But anyway, so they got all these kids, and this track, "Happiness is Simple," is basically just to emphasize the lightheartedness, the playfulness, the innocence, and how good life is now. With seeing these kids, they're growing up playing with Jake Sully and Neytiri. It's just seeing a happy family, and that's a really big theme in this movie, is family. And I think Simon Franglen, he took the ICU motif and sort of interpret it as a family theme at this point. Jake Sully and Neytiri, we already know that they're married. They obviously they love each other, but now their love has expanded into this family. And so now is to keep a family stable and protected. But with this track, it's just the everyday life of a family. Everybody's just playing each other. Everybody's happy. The kids are kids, and they're growing up. It really kicks off for me at the 56 second mark. You hear it goes quiet, and then it comes back with I believe it's the strumming of the guitar. I could be wrong. And then all of a sudden you hear the woodwind solo, and then the light percussion. And then after the woodwind solo, then we get into the ICU motif, and it starts playing on from there. And then all of a sudden the roll of the crash cymbal, and then it just all goes out. It finishes off the song. And so I thought it was pretty beautiful. I love listening to it in my headphones, in my earphones, whatever. And it really just puts me in really like good vibes. If you want to like just lay down, don't want to do anything, take off all the stress. But now we get serious. So the next track that you heard was "Train Attack." So the human beings have come back to Pandora now, because of course. uh they're trying to build a new frontier, and they come back and they spent a year, I believe, right? Yeah. So the movie did a little time lapse. So the humans, they're back on Pandora. They've been trying to build a new frontier for a whole year now, and Jake Sully and the Ometakayan people have left the forest and have created a base up in the Hallelujah Mountains, those floating mountains with the waterfalls and stuff like that. And Jake Sully has has led a crew of warriors to strike at key moments to basically weaken the frontier. We cut to a scene of the train attack where Jake Sully and a crew of warriors, including Neytiri and their older sons, they're flying on the Ikran, the flying creatures, and they're attacking this train on a railroad. And so they blow up the railroad, and and it creates a whole domino effect of the train flipping over epically, and the destruction of the train allows Jake and the rest of the tribe to steal weapons and resources. So they're really just trying to weaken the enemy at this point. They're just taking all the resources that are stored in this train. What I like about this scene in the very beginning of the scene, as it cuts away from Cartridge and it cuts into Jake Sully flying, I love how the camera is just it's sort of like a drone shot, just flying through the forest, and all of a sudden Jake Sully comes in from behind, from overhead, and then flies into frame. I love that experience, and that's where the track begins, where the drum is just the percussion is just going crazy, and then you hear the motif, the from the choir. I like the accent hit on that last note, and then it crescendos in, and everything's just going crazy from there. And I love the attacks of the choir, that dot 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 dot, and that was also from the original movie, the original soundtrack. So there's a whole sort of tribute going on here with the arrangements and the the rearrangements and all that stuff with this motif is bringing back all the um all the nostalgia and the memories of what we saw in the original, of how Jake Sully had to overcome um these humans in battle. And so now it's this what this track is doing here is putting us back into that mode, into that fighting mode, where we put our trust in Jake Sully and have this fight against the humans at this point. The intensity and the triumphant brass, the percussion, the percussion really just has me going. And then of course the choir that represents the indigenous people. And then that brings me to the last track, Navi Attack. See, I don't know why I keep calling them avatars. It's the Navi people. So what's going on here? Spoiler alert again. What's going on here is that, okay, so we're basically at the very climax of the movie at this point. So we fast forward all the way to the final confrontation. So Jake Sully and his family are with the Metgaina people, the sea people, because he is trying to protect his family from the humans at this point. He's seen what has happened whenever the humans get their hands on his kids, and he doesn't want them to be involved in the war, and he doesn't want to fight, solely because he feels that it's the best way for him to protect his children and protect his family. So he seeks refuge with these sea people, who apparently he's already known the leader. We didn't know that, but they know each other. They accept him and his family. But now here comes the villains, Quaritch and his crew, and these whale hunters that that they convinced to go to war against these Metcaina people after they killed their whale friends. Uh, these whales are considered the Metcaina people's brothers or sisters in spirit. So after they violated that, uh, the Metcaina people they want to go to war. Uh, Unfortunately, the children of Jake Sully and the tribe they went out alone to warn this whale named Payakan, of the dangers that he could be hunted and killed by these people. So when they go off to warn him, the people are they show up and they try to escape them, but they get captured and they're held hostage. And so one of the kids, he has like one of those radio collars that they used in the first movie, and he notified Jake Sully, and Jake Sully he basically said, "Hey, they got our kids. Oh, we screw it, we gotta fight." And so the whole tribe, the whole army, they show up. They show up to meet the villains, and Quartridge is trying to make a deal with Jake Sully, say like, "Hey, come on this boat. I won't kill your kid." And while that's going on, Jake Sully he basically surrenders himself, seeing that there's no other option. But then the whale Payakan he does a little sneak attack from under the water, and he jumps out of the water and jumps on the ship and destroys a lot of the equipment. He takes out some of the people, some of the soldiers, and that's when you hear the track at the beginning when the brass is winding up and crescendoing, and that's basically translating Payakan's frustration because he got to be friends with one of the kids. So he sees that the kid is in danger. He winds up, he's building himself up, he's building adrenaline and said, let's go. And then he charges to the boat. And as he's jumping up, that's when you hear the heroic, as he's jumping in the air and jumping on the boat, the choir goes crazy and the orchestra goes crazy, and then you hear the music winding up. That's when the Na'vi people begin to charge towards the ship, and then you hear the choir singing that motif, that ICU motif, and that's when you know it's like, okay, we're getting down to business. The Na'vi people are attacking. The Na'vi are attacking, and now it's battle time. And that's basically the usage of that motif is obviously to get you the audience to be on the side of the protagonist, the Na'vi people. Like the world of Pandora is going to overcome these villainous human beings. With that motif, Simon he put so much intensity with that, just like the train attack, score. It's basically very similar. It's basically the same. There's so many things that's happening, right? Jay Sully is off to fight Quartridge. All the Metcaina people are attacking all these soldiers, and the kids are trying to get out of danger. They're trying to get the kids. The whale is still fighting these people, these whale hunters. There's just so much going on in this battle. I interpret that as it's really telling the audience of who's good, who's bad, who to root for. Basically, it goes back to that motif that you've been hearing ever since the first movie. That was Simon Franglen's work on Avatar 2. I just want to do a real quick read some of these lyrics from the song I See You and give a better interpretation of what this song is talking about and some of the key hints. The first verse goes, walking through the dream, I see you. My light in darkness, breathing hope of new life. Now I live through you and you through me, and chanting, I pray in my heart that this dream never ends. So I see that in the point of view of Jake here. Like we established that he's disabled. He can't feel his legs, and he's lived his life in a wheelchair. And so when he talks about walking through a dream, I see you. You know, he gets it's almost like a dream for him. He gets into this avatar body and he sees, Neytiri. I pray in my heart that this dream never ends. What I get from that is he doesn't really want to go back to his old life. He wants to stay in his dream where he can walk, where he feels free in a way, and he wants to stay with Neytiri. You teach me how to see all that's beautiful. My senses touch your world I've never pictured. Now I give my hope to you. I surrender. I pray in my heart that this world never ends. So that's pretty self-explanatory too. You teach me how to see all that's beautiful. We go back to when Neytiri was training Jake of how to to learn the ways of the Na'vi, to be one with the forest, be one with the creatures, and all that stuff, and see how vast this world is. And ultimately, Jake Sully surrendered himself to this new world, this new life, this new culture. And now I'll read the chorus. I see me through your eyes, breathing new life, flying high. Your love shines the way into paradise. So I offer my life, I offer my love for you. Yeah, that basically sums up. He sees Neytiri, he falls in love from Jake Sully's point of view to Neytiri. Music can always be pretty nostalgic. I know we're in a world now where everything just seems nostalgic now, and Hollywood is going off the nostalgia tour with their films. But with Avatar, it's pretty different because the sequels, we waited for the sequel for a long time, and obviously the death of James Horner, for me personally, it had me asking questions to see just who would take the new spot of composing the music, because the first Avatar, I think, in my opinion, is like one of the most untouchable soundtracks. But after watching the movie in theaters, after hearing it and all that surround sound, Dolby Atmos, and then revisiting the soundtrack on Spotify, I can say that this was a job well done. Music can be very nostalgic, but when done right, and when there's a vision for a previous work, and you find a new purpose for that motif, for that melody, for that song, and you enhance it in a way, I think it's a beautiful thing. So thank you. And also thank you, James Horner, for inspiring me, for inspiring my creativeness. This is me opening up again. So thank you so much, James Horner, and may you continue to rest in peace. And Simon Franglen, you continue to do a good job, because you're doing fantastic. So this is the end of the Playlist Shuffle podcast. Welcome to season 4. More episodes to come, and more interviews to come as well. So thank you all again for tuning in. Again, you can follow the Playlist Shuffle podcast on Instagram. You can follow my personal Instagram at jmalley_guy. You can follow the Playlist Shuffle podcast on YouTube, and also TikTok as well. We're trying to widen our appearance on social media. So thank you again. Stay blessed and keep listening to music.